You see, something's going to happen.
What? What's going to happen?
Something wonderful.
What?
I understand how you feel. You see, it's all very clear to me now.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. This episode, we got a few of us here today. We got, besides myself, we got Lisa, the Occult Reject mad scientist. What is going on? How are you? Thank you for joining us.
I'm good. I'm looking forward to hearing all about Ricardo's book.
Yes.
He's mentioned it several times and waiting to hear his take on it.
Oh, yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for joining us. And Headless Giant. What is going on, sir? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm the Headless Giant. You can find me on YouTube and on X and on Instagram. And if you have an occult story or some sort of paranormal experience you'd like to tell me about, you can email me at headlessgiantpodcast@gmail.com. We read those every Thursday.
Oh, yeah. Send the guy the emails. All right. Now next, Ethan Indigo. Sir, thank you very much for joining us. Always appreciate it. Oh, yeah.
No, always appreciate being here. Thanks for putting this together. And Lisa and Headless, thanks for being here. Looking forward to hearing Ricardo's breakdown. I'm a writer and I'm on all the social media. Got a recent article on Occult Rejects. Oh yeah, there's one of my books.
Yeah, I was looking for the one.
Thanks, Headless, for checking that out and showing it. Appreciate that. And I got an article on the. Oh, there's my.
That's another one.
Nice. Thanks, Nick.
Yes.
Thanks, you guys.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, I got it. Those are my more popular books. Got a few others, and I just finished a book, kind of looking at the sacred an article, looking at the sacred geometry of the circumpunct on Occult Research Institute. Thanks, you guys.
Oh yeah, thank you very much, Ethan, and definitely people go check out his books. And finally, the man himself, we got Ricardo back, and he's going to talk about his book. What is going on, sir? For any new listeners who may not know who you are, please let them know what your deal is.
Thank you. Good evening to you all, and thank you for having me once more.
Of course.
I appreciate that.
Always love it.
For those that don't know me, my name is Ricardo Calvário. I live in Portugal. In terms of work, I've done the Resonant Earth, we are going to talk about today, and a book called Stardust that is more related to consciousness and how we envision science and how it englobes catastrophism and uniformitarianism, determinism versus free will, and so on. It's a different concept than this one. It's a completely different book. I'm deeply involved with the Institute for Natural Philosophy that I invite everyone to go and see at institutefornaturalphilosophy.org or Institute for Natural Philosophy at InstNatura at X. You'll find there our magazine, our publication. We'll launch the third issue this month. And everyone that is interested or think he has something to contribute to our goals, please go to the page and go to the proper form and fill it out, and we'll reach out to you once more. And well, pleased to be here.
Of course.
Thank you.
Oh yeah. So when it comes to this book, what was it that made you think, like, what's different about this book that you think other books didn't have that made you do this? What was the reasoning for you to put this book out?
Well, what it might bring of different is the fact that I'm trying to combine all the disciplines related to how we study megalithic sites and add what I've been finding in the last 2 years or so through my research into archaeacoustics as the key to unlock the functionalities that all the rest works for. So without using the sound or the frequency, you might consider those words correct. Without that frequency, probably sound people will associate with something that they can hear, but some of these sounds we cannot hear. They are infrasound, and they are below that threshold that for some people is 20 hertz, for others is 16, but below that threshold we cannot hear it and is infrasound. Everything above 20 to 22,000 hertz is ultrasound that we also cannot hear. So all of this enter in factor in this. So it's not only those that we can hear, that's why I'm correcting it from sound to frequency. So the difference to me is probably that, the fact that I'm trying to combine geology, mineralogy, archaeoastronomy, sacred geometry, archaeoacoustics, all into the analyze as I used to analyze one single site and see all those studies, combine them all together and see what results we can obtain. Basically, I think that's the difference.
That was great. Now, I know you're talking about these acoustics. I don't know if it's in your book, but I think you have brought it up, and you kind of went into it a little bit. It was stuff with churches. Was that anything that you had in your book where you were talking about, I think, the way they were built?
Sure. Churches, if we consider churches, cathedrals, temples, and chapels, some of them, especially those that were built during specific years, were placed on top of or after demolishing the ancient sites. So because they didn't have the technology to find the nodes, and adding to the fact that they need to convince people to add to this new spiritual guidance, they are using some of the old rituals mixed with the new rituals and using the same sites that people were used to congregate to influence them. So the benefit for them is, and this is the big difference, perhaps this answers your question, the massive difference between a megalithic site and placing there a church or a chapel or a cathedral is that while the megalithic site will use its functions to benefit both inside and irradiates out that same influence, while the church will concentrate all that energy inside the building for specific purposes instead of with different purposes, let's put it that way. So that's, to me, the biggest difference between an ancient megalithic site and the more recent structure built with the intent to use those same energies, but not in benefit of the people, but yes, in personal interest.
Yeah, I thought maybe it might have been you too that had mentioned that. I think with the music, the way that the places are built and the way the music is played, it almost doesn't.
Sure. So, if you look into the Vatican Church, their churches, especially some of them, you have composers that are hired to create specific music for that church alone. That's why you have music composed for specific churches. Then they might work on other churches that have similarities or they'll build under the same principles, and so that music can pass from that church to another. The effect that they are using, and that the real trick here is when they started using the pipe organ. Because with the pipe organ, if you notice, every single archaeoacoustic study, they came to the same conclusion. The key is a key that has three elements. So you have the infrafrequency, and you can have one in the middle frequency and one in a higher frequency, but there are always three different frequencies. So you can have the Schumann resonance around 7 something, and you can have another that is either 4 or 2 or 8 or even 110. It depends on the site, it depends on the functionality that you are looking for. But there are always three components. One that is natural, one that is induced by humans, and the other there is a response from the site itself. So in terms of producing a music, when they use this pipe organs, the function of these pipe organs is exactly to produce the three frequencies. So they can produce the very lows because of the pedals that you have on the, for those that don't know what a pipe organ is, you have a keyboard that is used by your feet that produce the very deep bass that can go infrasonic. There are tubes like this that are as big as a tree in terms of girth and height, just to produce that very deep rumble that we can't hear, but we can feel inside the ceremonies. So that's the reason of the pipe organ. And these musics were composed to make the site resonance and create this sensation that led people into this fervor of entering into this religion and this cult, because they went there and they felt this communing with the divine. They felt the presence of something higher than themselves because they were being messed up in terms of consciousness by these frequencies. So it's well known that in labs, if you put someone under 4 hertz, for instance, you cannot hear it, but it will create a very relaxed state of mind. If you put most people between the band of 108 and 122 hertz, most people between these 2 hertz, most of them are 104, 110, 114, they will have altered states of consciousness by the sound alone. So the muses can change by the difference of you using the sound compressed or uncompressed. And is when sound is starting to be compressed that things go to another level beyond consciousness and start to be on the functionalities. So that can be protection, can be long distance communication, can be vibrational imprinting on the site itself. And this leads us to other positions.
Ricardo, I had a quick question.
Sure.
You said three notes. Were they using the concept of circle of thirds? Because, I mean, the basis of every chord progression in music is 3, right? You start with a 3. But when you look at, because you mentioned that it wasn't like octaves. It was actual within the octave itself. Like there was actual chords itself. And it reminds me of the circle of thirds in music theory, where you have like this how do you say, it almost forms like a perfect fourth, a perfect fifth, and it gives you a stabilization of an actual chord to where it resonates in a certain, kind of like with Christmas songs, they're in minor chords, and then you have the happy songs, but it gives you this like vibratory type stabilization when you do it in those types of progressions. Did you look into any of that?
Sure. I can tell you that sites like West Kennet Long Barrow and many others that are built in that area, they detected that this is where coincidence starts to take planning, because they detected that the chambers were built in 4 thirds in terms of shape. And when they introduced the sound reproduced the same 4 thirds as it was moving along the structure. And that's how you create different frequencies for each room. So obviously, yes, they knew of that, and they implemented into the structures. Yes,
that's fascinating.
Yes,
that's wild.
In the churches too, the entire structure would be made in a ratio to sacred geometry. So having that single ratio all throughout the building gives you a note. It literally translates over to the hertz frequencies. And I also wanted to bring up the fact that the different states of consciousness are measured in hertz. So the alpha wave is between 8 and 12 hertz. Theta is 4 to 8 hertz. Delta waves are frequencies below 4. Gamma is between 30 and 44 hertz. Beta waves are between 12 and 35 hertz. So all these different states of consciousness are directly translatable into musical notes. And I think there probably is a, kind of a crossover, at least between the principles used in these structures that are very, very low pitched.
Yeah. Well, I usually give the example of this organist that plays this church organs and goes there to tune them, and he's a YouTuber with some success. I think he lives from his YouTube channel right now and plays on the churches. And one of his videos that I was lucky enough to be probably the first one that I saw caught my interest, because he was in a small chapel and was playing a music to see if the organ was actually ready to be delivered. And he chose the music that was made for that chapel. And he recorded it. He has very good equipment and so on. And so he recorded it. And when he was listening to it at home, he realized that beyond the music that is played, the chapel was playing a music of its own, using the elements of the resonance of the building. And so, what? I didn't play this. And so there was another tune going that he cannot hear, but the system detected, and the tune was there and could be translated by lowering or going up. I can't remember, but it could be translated to notes and could be played. So yeah, this sites, by no matter how innocent they look, once they were built with this intent, they are completely functional. Yeah, at least in terms of altering states of consciousness.
May I ask on that, Ricardo? You pointed out that there's the three sounds, and there you just illustrated them well. The naturally occurring sound, the human-made sound, and the resulting sound, and
Exactly.
that resulting from the organ. What I wonder, at different sites, were there vocal? What was the human input? Was it always the same, or what were the different inputs?
What they found in archaeacoustics is they work by bull roarers. A bull roarer, for those that don't know what it is if you've seen Crocodile Dundee 2, is what he uses on top of a cliff with a cord rotating a stone. That's a bull roarer that I thought it was Australian. It isn't. It's actually quite Irish and Scottish and very used in the UK. And I actually thought it was only Australian, but I found out by researching this that they use this in UK too. So you can use it by a bull roarer. You can use drums. They typically work at 440 to 480 beats per minute. That's what they found works. They can use by male voices that are, well, some sites, it's not the voices that are tuned, but the sites seem to be tuned to voices that work on the 110 hertz frequency. That's more or less the male frequency that comes out, especially in choir format. So there's the activation there. Another interesting thing that they found out is there is a difference between sites that were made for singing from women and singing from men. They are very distinct in their acoustic characteristics. In terms of resonance, they were specifically made to operate as females. So you have Hagar Quinn, a site in Malta, that it's built like a 833 hertz antenna, the same format, and it's turned into the sea. And so there is this theory. I've talked about this in the island of Lampedusa, where the sound reaches 60 kilometers, but this is not the part that I'm going to focus now. What they found out also is that it is very much connected to the myth of the sirens, because these fat ladies would sit on this temple singing against its walls, and the sound would be created and sounding that skreek that people heard at sea, that could be used either as this disturbing sound, or it could be used as something to focus and bring people to land. So I thought that was an interesting connection, because they also have these statues of these very fat ladies with their mouths as they were speaking or singing, and they have fin tails. So that's how they connected that to the sirens, and when they try to reproduce the effects, that's the effects that they get from this site. And the site is not operational because it no longer has a ceiling, but they still could see the effects in terms of modeling. If you wish, I think for the people to understand better how this system works, I would like just to give us a small idea of the grids themselves, because at the base of all of this, you have this telluric energy grid. And so the most important, I think the most important is the Schumann wave, that it's global, as most of them. It's omnidirectional. It resonates exactly with the electromagnetic field, which is about 7.8 or something like that.
So the Schumann resonance is just one form of telluric energy.
You can describe it as such. So the source of it is by the Earth's rotation and the core metals, as we are told. So they say that it's also driven by more or less 1,500 lightning in the atmosphere that also charge it, and is somehow aligned with, as Headless said, with the alpha brain waves of 7.5 to 12.5 hertz. This can be distorted by geological features, faults, waterways, and it has this name because it was discovered by a gentleman called Schumann in 1952. Then you have the Hartmann grid, that also global, but it works in rectangular cells that are more or less 2 meters wide, and they are north-south. So they are 2 meters by 2.5 meters. So 2 meters north-south and 2.5 meters east-west. The source is also the Earth's magnetic field, but it's influenced by solar activity. And this by its own generates a low gravity current of about 1 to 10 hertz. It was, as a curiosity, it was identified by Ernst Hartmann in 1950. Then you have the Curie grid that is also very important here. It is also global, but it's diagonal. So it has cells of about 3 to 4 meters, and is rather larger than the Hartmann that we just saw. So it's separated by 4 and 4 meters, is diagonal, and it has an offset of precisely 45 degrees from the Hartmann grid. This one is generated by lunar gravitational influence, and it peaks at full moon and possibly cosmic influences too. Some defend that. This one was discovered by Sigrid Whitman in 1950. Then we have those that most people know, that is the Weil vortices. If people are watching, the people behind it generously sent me this of the Becker-Hagen grid with the Weil vortices that I still haven't had the time to put it together. And so these Weil vortices are 12 regions. Each one has between 1,000 and 2,000 kilometers in diameter, as the Bermuda Triangle, for instance, that has 1.5. They are orientated at around 25 to 27 degrees north, and 25 to 27 degrees south, and the other ones are the North Pole and the South Pole. This was identified by Ivan T. Sanderson in 1972. It seems a lot, but I've only 2 more to go. Then you have the one that I'm showing you, that is the Becker-Hagen grid. That is polyhedral cells of 100 to 1,000 kilometers. And they combined this globe of isohedron, I'm not sure, and the dodecahedron together, and that's what they saw, the interconnection of the points with the two geographic lines. And last but not least, and this one is particular to Nick because I talked to you about this ones, these are the black lines. And the black lines are 0.1 to 1.6 kilometers wide, so completely different from the other ones. They have no consistent global pattern, and they can be orientated anyhow they please. So they completely varied with position, height. They are not stable, they are not permanent as the other ones that only increase or decrease in energy, disappear and disappear. So, and the ancients, what we know is that they avoid them, because where we find them, we don't find anything built upon them. So I'm sorry for the length, but I thought it is important for people to understand that the base of all this metallitic structure is, these are the foundations. So they only need to find one of these nodes where these lines intersect that has either underground water movement, fault lines. We always find all these ingredients because it's that fault line and that underground water movement that is going to amplify the Schumann resonance. Those 7.8 hertz are amplified by these structures to inside this buildings.
So it's intersections plus geological formation that really gets the power activated.
Exactly. Because I've been talking to the gentleman that sent me the map, and one of the arguments that he used with me is that these lines are vortices. They can be anywhere. So the power is available. The power is available absolutely anywhere, but so the only solution is, if it is available anywhere, it has to be these fault lines and these underground water movements that make them apart, because they are built on top of that everywhere without a fault.
In your opinion, what kind of portals does this open for the mind and for these different sites? Is there some sort of a change that comes that is, you know, measurable that we can experiment with?
So I'll give you the example of West Kennett Long Barrel. That's, I hope, is going to be my first project on the field. So what Steve Marshall did there, that is one of the major players in the acoustics. What he did there, he went there the first year, and I didn't say this before, so I take the opportunity to say now. I was saying that they tried to put the sound inside, and it doesn't work. They found out that the sound has to be done from the outside of these structures and not the inside of the structures. So that's what happened to Stephen Marshall. He tried different instruments, voice, chanting, drums. He tried everything inside the main chamber of West Kennett Long Barrel. That is one of those that has the 4/3 that we were talking about. And nothing happened. And so he returned the next year, and he decided to play the instruments one by one from the courtyard. So the one that produced the effects that you are asking about is done with a drum playing at 440 beats per minute at the entrance. And the boy that was on the first chamber to the left started to saw, he was in, that's darkness, there's no light inside. So the boy describes it that he started to see the stones to have this strange black glow that he couldn't describe how it was a glow, but it was distinguishable as a glow, as some form of light, a dark light. After that, the whole thing started to shake. Well, there is no report of it shaking from the other people. But he's the only one inside, so that might matter. And after that, he saw something round on the east wall that we know has nothing to there. So it's just the structure, earth, and the field. There's nothing there. So he saw this circular opening open up. He could see the other side of the portal, and he got scared and he closed his eyes. We're talking about the children with 14 years old. That was one of the subjects of the experiment. And so
I just wanted to pop in real quick. So what you're describing with playing the music inside versus outside is the Helmholtz Resonance.
Exactly.
So the Helmholtz Resonance is something that you get with bottles, right when you're getting the tone from the bottles. When the frequency hits the right pitch inside of these bottles, you get a major resonating effect. But it has to be done at the proper ratio to that subject. So if you're doing it from outside, then the entire inside is geared towards that Helmholtz frequency.
Yeah, absolutely. They do in fact show that model, and it fits perfectly on the structure of this building. So they are very much done to have that effect into them. So I was saying the kid closes his eyes because he's frightened, and he describes that for 2 times he felt a presence coming from the portal, circled around him, and going out again. So the experiment took about 14 to 16 minutes, more or less. And the guy describes this to the scientist, and what do you expect? That Stephen Marshall, listen to this, let's replicate this immediately. We are all here, so let's replicate the experience. Let's see what's going on. No. He decided to finish with himself inside the chamber, but with headphones and binary bits. So it didn't work, obviously. What worked is the site rejected him. So he describes as himself being projected 4 meters into the air and slammed into the ground 3 times. That's what happened. And the ceiling is 2 meters high. So, and this is a serious guy. So he wouldn't say it if he didn't saw, and he knows measures because this is the guy they call, this Steve Marshall. They call to a site, and the guy says, by eye, this is 2 by 4, 7 by 8, that's 300 feet long, and the guy is precise. It's incredible. He's a machine on that regard. So when he says he was moved 4 meters into the air, he's really saying that he was moved 4 meters into the air, right? But there's nothing. There's no inquiry. There's no speculation, nothing. investigation, the research was closed. It was written on the paper, and it has stayed like that for 7 years or 8 years so far. And no one has done nothing. And I want to go there. I want to go with all kinds of cameras, night vision, infrared, everything inside. I want temperature detectors. I want to see if there are differences in the millivoltage of the stones. I want to an ECG on the guy that is in the middle of the chamber. And I want to know that either is it real and physical, and we can send a drone or something into the other side, or even if it is happening just in the heads of the person, can he just interact with something else just the same as an OBE experience and is just as valid because it's the site that is doing that metaphysical portal instead of being a physical portal. That's what I'm trying to see with my experiment.
Well, I think it would take a little bit of mathematics, but I don't think it's impossible to get these ratios right. I mean, we've got all the formulas at hand. Why not use them for something supporting that different type of mathematics? Didn't you also have an experience with a guy who was trying to submit a paper that had a different form of mathematics developed from these different sites?
You can't accept it because that mathematics has not been invented yet.
Right.
That's what he's saying, though. I invented it. Well, not invented it, but you know.
Yeah, but he cannot invent something. It has to be another name.
Yeah.
Then he can work on it. He didn't came from them. Well, and another aspect of this that I'd like to include is how do they tune the frequency? How do these people tune the correct frequency? And from my research, I'm led to believe that these massive stone basins, granite basins that we are finding on these sites, including on this one, the West Kennett Long Barrow, New Ranch, all of them have these large water basins made of highly crystalline stone that are placed on exposed bedrock. So you have everything covered with dirt. Exactly. Everything is dirt, but the place where the balls of these basins are placed is the mother rock, exposed. So there is no loss in the communication between the resonance and the ball itself. And then you put water into this stuff. And what happens when you start introducing the frequencies? The water will turn into easy water, into what the ancients call living water, what someone called structured water, and it becomes like a gel. And you add these vibrations, and you start to see patterns on the water itself. And you know by the patterns that you show up on the water if you are on the right frequency or not. So it's like a tuning device, because we see these spirals on the outside of Newgrange. You have 3 massive spirals. That could be a map of the frequency you have to obtain to activate certain frequency, for instance. When you looked at long-distance communication systems that happened in Spain, France, and the Americas, you find that these cliffs, massive cliffs that have these concave structures, the only ones that work were the ones that have pictograms. The others have no art whatsoever. And there's no reason for them not to work because they're just the same, but they don't work. The ones that work, that allow the communication to be on the horizon, are all drawn with pictograms and rock art and whatever.
That brings up another interesting subject. All of these cave paintings and rock art paintings and Adobe paintings have somehow survived over thousands and thousands of years because we don't exactly know what they're using as paint, because this stuff is incredibly robust. I mean, if you think about it, how are these, prehistoric materials supposed to stay on a rock wall for that many thousands and thousands of years? There's something going on with that we don't fully get, because they shouldn't be there still.
Yeah, there was I just watched it recently. I think it was yesterday on Twitter. I watched like a video where they were showing that they had tested some ink that or whatever they used to draw on the wall, and they said it was the closest place to even get that stuff. It was like, I think 150 miles away.
In the Pyrenees.
Yeah, then he had to heat it up to 1600 degrees to burn it to even get it to start using it. They're like, why did you even go that far, and how did you even know that?
Yeah, but I'll give you one more. So why aren't we finding torch marks on the ceiling? How the hell did they paint on the darkness?
And flashlights.
No one wanted to touch this. Okay, the paintings
charged
are
crystals.
magnificent, but how did they see in the dark? Because there's no charring on the ceiling. There's no torches being used. So how was it done? And in fact, I think that in the France, the most famous, what is called, it's not Altamira because Altamira is in Spain, but the Lascaux. I do believe that it was the guys that discovered that and were studying the images at the beginning of the century with the torches that burned the ceiling, that they are now saying that there are torches markers on the ceiling, because we find a lot of these caves with art, they don't have any chart on the ceiling.
Right. And you can really tell the difference. I went to Marble Cave in Missouri at Silver Dollar City. This cave is so massive, right? They actually fit multiple balloons underground, like, hot air balloons underground in this thing. Just really? Gigantic, yeah. And you can still see the scorch marks on the ceiling in that area. And, there had to be like 500 feet of distance between that and the ground. And yet you still see these scorch marks. And none of these sites in France that have some of the oldest rock art in, human, like 40,000 years old, not a single scorch mark on the ceiling. And all the stuff is perfectly preserved.
Right. And that's where turboluminescence, I think, comes into action. Because if you excite the crystal, be it by chanting, by resonance in the correct place, you'll put it to glow. It's like pressing a granite with a hydraulic press. If you shut the lights out, you see the veins of crystal inside it starting to light up. It's faint, but it lights up. So could it be some kind of technology that we are not fully understanding yet? Because they had to illuminate it somehow, and it's not electricity.
I mean, technically,
it's not.
Sorry to interrupt. If you want to go buy the Book of Mormon, if you they're shitting at their stuff, they got over here from glowing rocks on the front of their boats.
Yes,
That's
sir.
their story. Glowing rocks.
And these boats were all submarines too. So
yeah, they had glowing rocks.
Really interesting.
So
stuff.
I mean, you are getting a story of glowing, crystals or something.
Right, underwater UFOs maybe.
And how
I wonder.
Go on, Ethan.
No, please go ahead.
I'm just asking how they excite the stones. If they describe how they excite the stones.
I would think probably some sort of frequency, right? Or pressure.
I don't know.
Well, I was going to ask, and this makes me wonder even more, if these places with the 3-tone generation systems, if they were set up, in fact, for healing centers and or power generation, were there machines of some sort, but were they? I mean, I kind of understand. Excuse my ignorance. That modern day electricity is kind of dissonant with a lot of existence, if you will, whereas it sounds like this form of electro vibration, and there are other kind of tones of electricity that can be more consonant with existence, if you will.
Sure.
I hope that makes sense.
To that, I would say that give me the beginning of the question again, so I don't miss it.
Well, I was wondering what they were, if these places were in fact set up for healing.
Oh, healing. Sorry.
Right? Or were they set up for something else more, not mundane necessarily, but something more mechanical?
I found out at least one site, that is the Osiris Shaft, that when you calculate the frequencies of the Osiris Shaft, I found out that is the only site that I'm aware of that doesn't need any sound introduction. It's completely autonomous. And it's still doing it today, and we know it's still doing it today because the water at the bottom is still living water, is still easy water or structured water. It has no contaminants that can mingle with the water. There's a lot of debris, but it doesn't manage to mingle with the water. Water is as pure as can be because it's when you look at a super microscope, you find out that the molecules are formed as hexagons. So there is no space for impurities to fit in the middle. That's why it is so pure. So how they manage this is there are 3 shafts that are not in Zahir Owa's design, because he was the one that solved that problem, and I'm sure he's the one who's going to solve the new one of the underground structures.
I'm sure
everyone was talking about the Osiris Shaft as the place of where they healed Osiris, and the workers were using the water to take bath in and to drink and all of that stuff. They even made a tube all the way down the bedrock just to bring water from there to their workplace to drink it at the background of the university that is right there. And so he was forced to go there and measure himself and produce the paper that it's the only paper we have about the Osiris Shaft is the one that he made. So when we use all the measures that he provided, and we include the 3 shafts that he didn't put on the paper but are documented, those 3 shafts are responsible to create the different frequencies beyond the Schumann resonance. So they created a system that is completely autonomous and brings different frequencies to each healing granite box, because it has several granite box on the 2nd level and 1 granite box on the bottom level, whose difference is the one on the bottom level is completely submerged. Only the lid is above the water. So the effects would be much more potent there. And so by calculating the resulting frequencies, he uses in therapy with the uses of ancient Egyptian medicine that are the bandages and the unguents that they apply to the skin and all, be it a broken limb or a cut or whatever, the results can go up to 40% more quicker in terms of healing under this, inside these tanks. I calculated that for a broken leg. It's 40% quicker to heal if you are immersed in these tanks for 1 to 2 hours a day, let alone to be there for 24 hours.
Nice.
I have a theory. So New Agers now have these massive singing bowls.
Yeah.
That people can stand in water in the middle of them, and once you hit the resonant tone, it goes all throughout the person's body.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. I thought at the beginning that they were using salt water because salt water is very good to permeate the skin. But then I found out about the water at the bottom. And living water or structured water or easy water goes by the skin as if the skin isn't there. So every single unguent that is applied to the bandages is immediately absorbed into the body. That's why the effects are quicker. And then you have the resonance acting on the water itself where you are submerged, and all of that enhances the process. Sorry, go on.
Well, I was just going to say that the resonant frequency of the Earth, right, 7.8 hertz, inside of a structure that has the Helmholtz frequency of 7.8 hertz would create the resonance, right?
Right.
I mean, that way it wouldn't even need any other frequency as a principle. You're using the Helmholtz frequency of the Earth itself.
No, because you have different, each one of the chambers that contains these healing granite boxes has a different frequency. So it treats different things. And I presume that the one at the bottom that they call is where Osiris was resurrected, with his 4 pillars that indicate some form of plasma energy going on through these pillars into the box. I presume that could even be for very serious cases, very serious trauma recovering would be at the bottom end of the structure. And the other ones are for different maladies because they work between the 90 and the 140 hertz that is then conducted into the box, the granite box, into the water that then produce different frequencies according to the level of the water and so on. So it's complicated, but it works. The fact is we are using those same frequencies today that I found on my research. We're using the same frequencies today to use in acoustic therapy to heal certain things.
Ricardo, you mentioned the icosahedron
Yes.
What we're talking about healing? What was the object that exhibited that 3D? It's a Euclidean geometry.
It's when it's all assembled, it will make a globe by the combining of a duocahedron with a octahedron. I'm not sure, but it's a combining of two produces this structure. And coincidentally, they found that every single line of this geometric form is where they find the strongest lines of the energy, telluric energy that they are following. And all of the 12 vortices or vital vortices exists under this each one of these lines, so convergences.
So it jarred a thing in my head, going back to my courses in immunology and so forth, and vaccine theory and what have you, is that most of the protein structures in your body that deliver proteins to the actual cell are octohedrohedrons. They are the most stable form of protein in order to deliver things. And what's even more interesting is that whenever your body encounters a bacteria, whatever particle, whatever, it tears it up into different pieces, and then it will display, or the immune cell will display pictures or actual structures of the actual organism to the antigen presenting cells will display it to like lymphocytes or whatever, so that it takes pieces and it makes antibodies to it and then disperses it out. But what's interesting is when the actual immune cell is presenting that particle, it is in the shape of an octohedrohedron. And so it's interesting that it's delivering information in order to create an actual healing mechanism. So that's why I was like, this is really fascinating, because it pairs almost identical to
like on a grander
immunology,
scale.
really. And what's even more is that in vaccine theory, and when they're looking at vaccine delivery or drug delivery drugs, is they're wanting to place it in these types of Euclidean icosahedrohedrons. So it's interesting that it all kind of parallels.
It's another case of coincidence explaining, for sure. And as above, so below, as above, so below, and so on. Yeah.
There's something you mentioned before, I think, about the structured water. Did you say it was in like a hexagon shape? And that's why the purities, something like that?
Because every single... So when you have an hexagon and combine... imagine a mat made of hexagons. Yeah. Every single face
lock in.
This, they are all connected. There is no space between for impurities to fall in.
Yeah, they do stonework like that in your backyard.
It is the most stable structure that you can have the most surface area. Why bees use it for hives.
That's what I was going to say. Now, I wonder with this whole hexagon thing. I mean, I think according to something that I read recently, I thought between like the bees flapping and the hexagon shape inside the beehive is like actually like helping like create stuff like the frequency and the shape. They think is
and how this is completely off topic, but maybe any of you have looked into this. How is that those gigantic bees with those very small wings fly?
They're not
Does
supposed
anyone
to.
know?
They're not supposed to.
It has to do with the way that the beating of the wings themselves produce some sort of,
I think it produces
whatever.
like a force, anti-gravity force field around them.
It is the platypus of insects. It should not be. They should not be able to fly the way that they are, and then carrying all of that pollen as well, and how offset they become.
Yeah, but do they create an energy field on how they beat the wing?
So
Headless?
I have a very clear descriptor of the easy zone right there. If you could tell, the charges on either side change, and it creates a hexagonal field of these now ordered chemicals, right? And so what happens is within that change of charge, it pushes objects out of the way using these hexagonal created. So ice is hexagonal too, right?
Exactly.
And so it creates this kind of simulation of ice with a more gelatin-like structure.
Yeah.
So the easy zones around these particles have this sort of gel-like structure. So if you get the water tuned to the right frequency, then it's going to react as if the entire thing is full of these particles that create these easy zones. So you'd have to hit that principle, and then from there, you structure everything out of the water. It's just like pushing it through. This is how our bodies actually circulate most of the blood, is through the easy zones that actually create a direction inside of the veins and arteries without having to, use any power. So it's functionally a straw because of the way that the charges work inside of those zones.
Yeah.
Another thing I just wanted to say real quick, I totally forgot. It was one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up the hexagon. Not to go back to the honey again, but isn't that even known as like something you can use as a barrier, so it doesn't get penetrated or? So I just find it weird how you're making something with a hexagonal shape, and you're saying that the same way that water works. I mean, it sounds very similar.
The level of sugar does not allow for the growth of bacteria. So it's something like that. I think that's kind of the concept of why they placed organs in copionic jars filled with honey. It's a preservative.
When I heard him say that, this sounds.
And it doesn't have a shelf life. Like, it doesn't go bad.
Yeah.
Sure. They found honey with 2,000 years in Egypt, and it was still eatable.
Mm-hmm.
Just by like $2,000 an ounce.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't eat it, but it was properly sealed. It was properly sealed, and they said it was still eatable because it was properly sealed.
Yeah, just when I thought of like honey and the structured water, the hexagon, I was like, that just seems weird.
Yeah, that's just the thing. Everything is somehow connected. Everything leads us in a big circle as long as we follow the threads, and you'll find that everything happens to be connected, and it's like reality is extremely simple, so much so that we cannot see it, but has a very complicated stuff.
And then
it's like
Go ahead.
Trying to explain the universe by looking at the bee flying. Right?
Yeah.
So I've got this book here called Sacred Geometry, and it's talking about how all of these different frequencies create these mandala effects using that version. And so what they're saying here is that using the sacred geometry alongside the frequencies changes the nature of a place, and they're saying that in the geometry textbooks as well as in the frequency textbooks, but the two of them aren't allowed to be studied together for some reason. And so we get a lot less of the type of scientific exploration of these topics because it's all woo, because they don't read any of the stuff that their own people put out, apparently.
Well, one of the things that is interesting in this is when we start to get out of the site itself as an isolated thing and start to connect it to other sites. And so we start to thinking, okay, how are they connected? They are connected by what is called the crystalline matrix of the Earth, where information goes at about 7 kilometers per second, which is not very fast, but it's not very slow. So anything that you could send from our perspective of what we can do today, the information will go through this matrix at 7 kilometers per second. Now, this brings it to me to a very interesting point in this research and of the book. That is, we are completely aware of the cult of ancestors, and that these people do these ceremonies, and they think that they are devoting themselves to the death and to the dead and so on. I think differently. I think that when we put in place this idea of vibrational imprinting and doing the rituals on the same place that can activate these trillions of crystals that are in each stone, that these rituals are being vibrational imprinted into the stone itself. So when you reach this level of consciousness inside the structure, repeating the ritual, you are communing with all the others that were before you doing the same ritual. In your transcendence of mind, you'll hear their voices, you'll hear their stories. There is even people that go as far as say that even the structured water could hold that information and even project it that information as an hologram that happens in our heads by the hive mind behavior of the quantum entanglement, and and this quantum entanglement is what I think motivated a tribe here and a tribe that is 70 kilometers away on a similar structure, communicating with one another in these hive mind states that are conducted from the crystal matrix. Now, people can ask, okay, but how can you fuse a person with a stone? Very simple. As soon as you enter in the same signature of frequency, there is no difference in the matter. You are still an individual, but there is no difference. That's why a camera.
Ricardo, are you aware of the paranormal idea or theory about why paranormal events happen at certain places called the stone tape theory? The idea that materials can actually retain a lot of the, I guess it would be vibrational values of things that have happened in the past, and you get the same thing playing over and over again. That's sort of the same idea. So humankind could be the result of the combination of stone tape theory and the stoned ape theory at the same place.
Exactly, no doubt about it. And because
like 45s or what is it? Those record players. You know how you press sound and then you can play it forever. Which you described, Ricardo, you were talking about how you can go to this area and the ancients were located in one area and then the ancient, other tribes were located in another area and they could commune. That is superpositioning. That is quantum entanglement.
Exactly.
That is the ability to do things. And sometimes there's a theory that you can invoke that through the olfactories, in that memory can stimulate or smell can stimulate memories, even though you don't have the memory themselves. Just smelling something, you can, I hate to use this, download an actual memory, because it would invoke the superpositioning of the quantum world.
And that idea leads me to the curious thing that when they found out that, for instance, this movement of my arm, only the signal that my brain sent to the body for me to raise the arm, this is completely wrong, because that's not what happens. Because the signal will get to my brain a fraction of a second after I start moving my arm. And they can't understand that. So that's why they say that there is some time, how should I say it? There is something wrong with the time when it comes to quantum computing or what our brain does, because the information the action happens before the information is processed. And I'm associating this with the fact that, as you were saying, this quantum entanglement cares not for distance or for placement, and it can be achieved by a person alone in the right conditions, as it can be achieved by a group of people. And I think that most people that have experiences because they went to some place, it's because they were at the right or wrong place at the right time, and they were in tune somehow with that frequency. Their emotional state led them to be resonating in a frequency that resonated with the site and created this entanglement, and people get these visions, these contacts of things that probably happened a long time ago. But the brain makes it real. That's what happens, I think.
I think that the Arrival and Interstellar attempt to explain that time is circular, all happening at the same time.
Those are bugged out movies, yeah.
If there is some credence here, I think you would have to look at vibration itself. I mean, vibration causes solid matter to be in flux. And when you're introducing those vibrations in there, they're going through you into the walls. You know, there's something to the idea that they're carrying some kind of information along with them. You can see that over and over again throughout ancient history. They believed that there was memory in these songs, and that's why it was important for them to perform certain tasks at certain places. So you have the tradition there of these songs acting as memory within the temples, which were designed with these principles in mind. So all of that together really does produce sort of a vision of maybe there was something more to this stuff back then. Maybe they had the keys.
I think so.
Maybe they were a type 1 civilization, as I'm starting to believe.
You know what I wanted to mention, and it just reminded me because you kind of brought it up again. Lisa, maybe you'd remember better. Do you remember when we covered that that Marian image on Teresa's show? Yeah, was that part of a specific church? Like, was that in a church or anything specifically? I can't remember that.
You're talking about, like, did it happen inside of a church?
No, that image that they have, is that part of, like, in a church? Like, is that a piece?
Yes, it is in a church. It's in a basilica, and it was imprinted on a cloak. And it was supposedly, the legend, the way it is that, not to get too detailed of it, is that, whether you believe it or not, is that the archbishop that was to be given the message, he was from a place in Spain that knew exactly what it was going to mean. The roses were Castilian. Castilian did not grow in Mexico. La Virgen de Guadalupe Virgen in Spain, was from the town he was from. She was the Black Madonna. That Guadalupe is the river that is named after. I believe it has a dual meaning, like it's both Arabic and Spanish or Latin, but it also means mouth of wolves or something. And so the entire message, even though it is completely cloaked, completely dressed in Aztec symbolism, the words and the meanings of what the message was tailored specifically to the archbishop the bishop that was there, because of where he came from in Spain. And so it's almost like a quantum moment in time of taking that message from that part in Spain and then transmuting it into that place in that hill. And the hill itself, where she supposedly appeared, was a goddess to the Aztec people. And she was like the Medusa or whatever, but she was for rebirth and what have you. Yes, it was placed specifically in a church that supposedly has ley lines and so forth.
Yeah.
So,
what I was thinking is that there was designs around it that could have possibly made music, and I just thought it might have been specific to that church.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Yes. On the cloak itself, it has patterns that if you were to place them into a musical instrument, it plays music.
So I was wondering
it's
if
actual
that was
notes.
Like tuned specifically for that church, if that image was inside a church. That's all. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. No, sorry.
You're not talking about the Shroud of Turin, right?
No.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
So in La Crosse, Wisconsin, they have this shrine to Our Lady Guadalupe. I don't know if you can see that, but it is on top of this hill overlooking the city. And I mean, there's nothing else around it that's anywhere close to how grand and magnificent this place is. And it's like, it just comes out of nowhere. But the entire church is like, it's a recent build, but it's all based around this vision of Guadalupe in Mexico. And it's, it's kind of odd that, it would be celebrated up here so far away from it. But this Our Lady Guadalupe thing is very much like the mystical heart of the Catholic Church.
There, and here is Fatima.
Yeah, I was going to say, in the Americas, it's Guadalupe.
Yeah. And here you have the same thing, but with Fatima. So it's I think it's the only paranormal event that is recognized by the Vatican, is what happened in Fatima. Although I find very strange that someone would say to 3 children, go home and mutilate yourself for the sins of others. It doesn't make any sense to me. And they did mutilate themselves seriously. So it makes no sense. But it was witnessed by, I don't remember, it was 12,000 people or something like that, the second or third time it happened. They all saw the sun. Yeah, the sun come real close until they couldn't see anything else but light, and then the light spoke, and it's gone, and that's the last thing. But it's quite a strange event, but could have happened could be explained by some kind of hive mind of some nodes that appear there, suddenly some vortex, something can explain, not meaning that it is, but it can explain it. You still happen today in Alatri. So you go to visit Alatri, and a lot of people still have hallucinations and hear voices, and that's one of the reasons people go there. Because each time you cross a gate of one of the 9 gates that it has these magnetic vortices that automatically tune your brain to 110 hertz. So everyone is on the same frequency. But answering what you're saying before, Headless, when they use this camera that detects the magnetic fields and the signatures of the people and of the rocks or whatever, when they put someone meditating on top or in front of that stone, you can see the stone and the person. As soon as the person enters in the state of meditation, helped by the site itself to reach the exact same level, to create this entanglement between the two, the person and the stone are the same. They just disappear from the image. There is no more person there. They are all the same thing. And even if it is on top of the stone, the person will still disappear from the image. It will all be stone. So it's all a matter of like it's often said, it's all a matter of frequency and vibration, as Tesla was saying so many times.
Right, but this could explain all of these instances of miracles happening in the ancient world. Is just, it's part of these frequencies and how they were, perceived. Yeah,
my only absolutism is to not be absolutistic. I don't know, but it can explain a lot of these things, because we know that just because it's your imagination, it doesn't mean you don't get cut, or your skin doesn't open, or you don't have hurt or bruises. It can just be done by your mind. We know that the mind has the ability to create those openings in the flesh or those bruises or whatever. The mind can create it. So even an abduction can be just one event of hallucination, but doesn't mean that all of them are hallucinations.
I do agree
right?
with that.
But it can justify that. People just think, no, he has the marks, he has the cuts. No. That the mind can do a lot of stuff to the body.
It could be a both-and situation where the human mind is being used as the manifester of these events.
Yeah.
I have often thought that some people who maybe with these UFO sightings were like targeted, like you just like shot with the frequency, and that's the experience they thought they had or something.
But if you go and take a high dose of psilocybin, for instance, and you pass through the experience of being abducted, right? It was the drug. So when it happens, but you did take no drug, no one will consider that it was because he was on the wrong place at the wrong time, in the wrong frequency or whatever, and it created that hallucination. So,
right, minds become more malleable at different frequencies.
Exactly.
I think that's a big part of why the government is so interested in this stuff. Is I think they believe they can come up with a pause button. Right? The correct amount of frequency applied to the body in this certain way, you can get a person to turn off. And I think that's a big goal of most governments is, they want an off button on humans, or at least a pause button.
Sure. Well, they cannot weaponize this. And that's a big detriment, because they don't know how to weaponize it. They tried, the Russians tried it. The problem is it affected everyone, not only the enemy, but even their own troops. So if it affects everyone, you cannot use it. So,
right.
Well, in contrast, it seems like they're hiding the benefits and also looking to make it detrimental too, as you point out. But it seems like the benefits too are being hidden.
Well, they are using for their own benefits. If you go to their clinics, they will have these tanks with water. We don't know what the water is. They use electricity, so micro impulse electrics. They use magnetics. They use all of these types of technologies, but they are not accessible to the public. If you see the documentary Thrive, yes, Thrive. Sorry, Strive is to accomplish, right? To evolve is strive, right? I'm saying it
strive,
correctly.
yes.
Strive or thrive? Strive.
Thrive. So you have
Thrive.
Thrive 1. Thrive 1 is more dedicated to free energy. And these boxes that you can have at the outside your door, and they'll produce more than enough electricity for your complete house and with no fuel into them. And the second one is more dedicated to all these new technologies of healing that are completely in accordance to these ancient technologies of frequency. And
another benefit that they are aware of, or we all are aware of, is the vibrations destroying parasites, right? And I believe the Rife machine, I just was trying to figure out the name, was designed on that. It's been, cast as a conspiracy and, not medically accepted, but same principle, finding the vibration that works against the parasitic infection, but doesn't hurt the host.
yeah,
Pretty simple idea, but right to your point of all these healing potential places.
sure. As a coincidence, we are talking about these tridactyls. One of them has something on his chest that has, so it's round, this side is round, and then has a connection, and he's right here. And the material that is, they say that it's made, it's used medically to destroy parasites, to purify things. That's what they use. And in fact, it's only dangerous if inhaled. If inhaled, it can irritate the lungs, and because it's a dust that is quite rough. But as a material, it is used medically to clean bodies and purified stuff. So I found that interesting that it was on the chest of that creature.
Right.
It's not. I'm sorry, Helmholtz.
No, go ahead.
It's not much different. Like whenever you are sterilizing, like one of those laboratory cabinets, we use UV light. You're using photons to sterilize, and so if you take the concept of photons being used to sterilize, then you can use the concept of phonons. I think that's what they call particles of sound.
Yes.
You can use the concept would be virtually the same, I think, if you could find the correct frequency to do that, to basically just resonate even the water inside their bodies and just combust them or tear them open. I don't see it accomplished.
If you are interested in that, I advise you to watch the Strive 2 documentary, because they'll go deep into that, and they'll show the machines that they are using by these rich people with extraordinary effects. They are healing serious illness by emitting the right frequency that either helps the body to reject the bad element or destroys directly the bad element, because they have the exact same frequency, and they send the anti-frequency of the frequency that organism resonates, and they kill it.
And would that be the same concept as using magnets?
In terms of medics, it includes electromagnetics. I think it's for different therapies instead of being by cancers but yes, they also use it.
Well, there's also I saw a scientist who turned seawater into a burnable liquid using frequencies. So he's hitting the seawater with a frequency, and he can light it on fire. And it's like, well, that seems like that takes care of the power crisis. As long as the effect isn't, too electromagnetically draining, you've got solid state fuel all around the planet. And what are they doing with that?
Burn the ocean. All the ocean's in flames.
You could have massive power plants that just use seawater instead of all this nuclear energy and all the rest of this stuff to boil water. I think that'd be kind of interesting.
Where is that supercar presented in the exposition, the World Fair of Cars? It was presented 12 years ago. That can go 400 kilometers an hour and work at seawater. That's the only thing you have to put on on the tank was seawater. He was presented on this very mainstream expo, but it disappeared completely as soon as the exposition ended. Where is it? Nowhere else. The technology didn't appear anywhere. It just vanished.
Is he still alive?
The guy that did it, I think, yes. In order to do what he did, he has to be in the billion scale to create something like that. So
we're on a huge precipice when it comes to water science. Just right now, all we have to do is go back to looking at frequency, vibration, easy zones, and all the rest of that stuff and start applying that in general to biology and all these other forms of physics. And you'll find that, the idea of these cavitation bubbles, have you ever heard of this? So cavitation bubbles are produced from a void in water. Right? So when you see a ship's propeller or whatever moving through the water, it creates these cavitation bubbles that are purely because of the amount of energy you're just moving through the water. It creates these voids. Well, if you can actually create a cavitation bubble between two frequencies and then have that cavitation bubble produce light out of this bubble. And these have been studies that have been done for years. And it's like, that's called fusion. You're creating light and energy out of a cavitation bubble from water. So what if we apply other energies to it? What if, you've got that frequency to create this, seawater that lights on fire, apply that too. Well, now you've got a self-sustaining source of energy that's sort of like fusion. I guess it would be fusion, really. And nobody's talking about it. It's right there. It's available. And that would be energy from the void. If you think about it, cavitation means a cavity. Yeah. All you're doing is taking the energy from a cavity. And if that's the case, that opens up a whole new branch of science and technology.
Sure. I don't know how it is related, but I know that they now use, for some years now, they use two opposite rotating propellers on the ships to don't create that cavitation, because that energy slows the boat down. So they rotate. They have a specific form for the propeller, and they rotate each one in the different, which doesn't make any sense, but they do rotate opposite one to another, to order to avoid those black holes in the water. Let's call it like that suck the boat backwards. So. And that's the term that they use is cavitation. So that's how I see the connection there.
Right. But, if they're slowing down in the water because of it, that means that there's a lot of energy being used in those cavitation bubbles, and nobody's harnessing that power.
No.
And it does eat away at ships. These cavitation bubbles will eat away at ships.
Exactly.
And how is cavitation eating away at ships unless there's a lot of energy inside of that? Well, I don't see how people don't see this,
The problem is there has to be control, and the system has to prevail.
Right.
And if everyone starts to becoming independent in energy, mobility, then what do they have to control us? Right? Right now, if they want to control us, they have to just unplug the power, and we are powerless. We don't have food, we don't have water, we don't have communications, we don't have anything. We are becoming immediately isolated from the world, no matter how populated the neighborhood is. Because in 3 days, everyone will be fighting for food and water, and they don't mind what I have to do for their family to survive.
And I wonder, this is highly speculative, so bear with me, but I wonder if some of these sites might have not even helped develop our minds into a state where we were more telepathic. And that is what institutions would definitely dislike if we knew we were being lied to, and I know it's crazy to suggest, but what if it really got our minds into, like the telepathy tapes, into a place where we were grounded but intuitive?
That's exactly how Alatri was described before they put the cathedral there, concentrating all the energy inside the cathedral. What is described on the Alatri is that they all share the same hive mind, where they knew exactly if you are an outsider, if you are lying. It's not like mind reading, but they could pass on. People are more readable. So you cannot fool the other person, or they can detect your intentions. It's described as something as that in Alatri. And it is a huge city. It's not a small place. It is big. So it's fascinating that they were using that.
That's wild.
Yeah. And it still happens today. Go on.
That was the concept with Arrival, is that, and I don't know if you've seen the movie,
Yes.
but basically the extraterrestrials come in and their language itself is taught to one of the scientists. And in learning that language, it reshaped her brain and made synapses that were not there before. And in making those synapses, because she learned the language, she was now capable of seeing time circular. That was the premise of it. So, yeah. And I think that is true. I think that the way that you learn things, it's no different than learning several languages. You now have an extensive, ability to communicate your feeling, and feelings are not binary. Language is binary, right? And so when you go to describe a feeling, you cannot, because language is binary where feelings are not. They transcend binary. But when you have multiple languages, you can feel a little bit more of a descriptive availability to you to describe the feeling, because now you have like more, I guess, tools. But I think with that movie, it was kind of tapping into rewiring of the brain and being able to harness or be able to have more capabilities for what the brain offers, like telekinesis or even seeing time circular.
Well, Lisa, what about the movie Interstellar with Woody Harrelson's brother? I forgot his name, but where he's
Yeah.
where he's talking through
the bookshelf, right?
Wormhole.
Bookshelf.
Right, but he's inside of a black hole speaking across
He's
the
inside the
universe.
Tesseract.
Right. So there's and first off, they're talking about this race of beings that created this, that they must be like gods, and then they're like, wait, we created this. And so there's that sort of same messaging there, is like, what if we're connecting to something that's, inside of us, that's creating this place?
How many
goes
bubbles
like
are
with-
there?
Yeah,
Go on.
a lot. It's that there's a quote, and I'm going to get it wrong, but it's like, travel the world, and when you venture outside, you will find yourself. And I think that kind of embodies that, is that we will leave who we are at this moment and move beyond and end up right back to where we're at. We created all this just to come back. And I think that if you believe in that, the people that come back are us. That we come back. Almost like an inner.
Have you ever calculated the ratio of death versus the ratio of reincarnation?
No.
Because it doesn't add up. It doesn't. That's why I don't think reincarnation can serve as a full explanation, because the ones that are here are much, much, much less than the ones that were here before. So, and although some people say, oh, no, it doesn't matter because it's cycled, so it keeps recycling, so the number is just the same. No, that's not how it happens, because...
See, I did have an idea about that, though, actually. I was wondering, because you were saying before about energy not being able to be destroyed, right? I'm also pumping a fuck ton of energy through my computer that wasn't used thousands of years ago. It's just being harnessed inside of a machine instead of skin.
Right.
So now there's less bodies because that energy's in there instead of a soul, as a meat sack.
Look,
I know I can sound crazy, but I'm just wondering about
this
that.
This is a biosuit. This is a biosuit. The fact, look, what I'm going to bring, that's why I'm not going to extrapolate here. What I'm going to bring into our next dialogue is precisely that our body, not our body, our real self that is not on our body, just connected to it, can use whatever we tell him that is our body. That's why the rubber arm experiment works. It doesn't matter if it is your body or not, as long as you are telling it that's your body. You are experiencing it.
And the occultists have been on this for so many centuries, talking about being brought into form. Yeah. They're almost like speaking about it from a third-person perspective. It's like we get brought into form because they're looking at what's going on around them.
It's exactly what Toth is doing. That's his whole story.
But that is what happens at conception, in that you have an explosion happen within the zygote itself, or pre-zygote, I guess you could say, and it is the ability to trap matter, to trap energy into matter, in that you were basically, I guess, calling forth, I don't know, an entity, an energy, whatever, and you're able to trap it into tissue, into mass.
Yeah, that's when that flash of light happens, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yes.
Calcium ion reaction.
When you were doing IVF for women who are doing IVF, or I guess both, the OBGYNs, when they are doing the implantation of sperm into the egg, they're looking for that flash. If they do not see that flash under the microscope, they do not consider those eggs viable, and they will not transfer them into the uterus. So, yes, it is an actual
thing. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it would be interesting because this flash, again, flash of light, if we could determine the frequency and repeat that and get sort of like a manifestation idea frequency going on using those tones and Hertz resonance.
Well, I think that's exactly why we are failing to cloning or to create viable creatures. We are failing at that point. We are only using biology and not metaphysics.
Correct.
Because
yes.
if you think, if you
that,
can,
and that's true that you say that.
Sorry.
I hope I didn't solve it for him. I take it back.
No, you didn't solve them because you are here, and so are us. And we are not part of the animal realm, so we are the only one that it's not natural in this planet. We don't belong anywhere. We don't fit anywhere. We can't survive anywhere. We need specific conditions. We are not made for nature. And it's not a matter of evolution because the rift is too big. There is nothing in the middle. You go from the trees to building houses. So
I think Ken Wheeler has a pretty good explanation on that with his idea of these the point or the passage of velocity. I think that's what it's called. But he's talking about the place between two magnetic poles that actually sustains the most amount of life and the most amount of energy possible is that mathematical zone between the two poles on a magnet. And so you look at the Earth, you look at the solar system, you look at all these different systems, it all has to do with that generalized shape and where things are happening and what things are happening. And so when you take that specific geometry and make the application to the body, you can start seeing all these other relations. And it goes back into the geometric concept of the planet itself and all those different nodes and energy points. It's all part of the same system.
Right. And if you think about it, that all of this can just be happening at a different level on what we call consciousness. We might as well be inside a marble or a molecule, and we are just atoms in there, because there is no scale, there is no need for any of that, because the perception would be exactly the same. It's like the end of the MIB movie, where you see the kids playing bowling, and there were universes inside of those balls, and then galaxies, and then planets, and so on. So I think that the scale matter, we reached the conclusion that there is no scale, that reality itself doesn't need a space.
Right. Ooh. Yep. That's the big issue. That goes right back to Parmenides, 700 BC, when he's talking about on nature and Zenu's paradox. Same idea. Maybe there is no space. That's why motion is technically impossible. And all they want to do is explain it away with some trigonometry, but there's a lot more to that concept than anybody gives it credit for. Everything is one thing. That's why they call it the universe. That's why, all of these things are connected entirely.
We are now starting to speak about multiverses, and we are going to overcomplicate this. Instead of going through a singularity, we are going to expansion and expansion and expansion without end until it becomes completely meaningless. It's the old saying that you have to look within so that you understand what it's outside. And we keep looking outside. We are trying to identify everything by what we see outside, and further on, and we lose concept of what is going on right here, right now. And according to what mad scientist was saying, is I think that once people realize of these moments that we all have, where we are able to say things that we never knew we knew, or that some information comes to us all of a sudden when we need it, or that some event happens in a strange coincidence and strange propitious time for it to happen. That is just when people manage to be in what can be called the zone. Because the objective to me is to bypass thinking and the brain completely and trying to live in that state that I now have a new word for it since our last podcast, Nick, I think, that is the Felix Felicius state of mind. That is the potion that Harry Potter takes and everything goes right. If you remember, he takes the potion and all he does is, well, I suddenly feel that I should be in that place. And we all have those sensations, we choose to ignore them.
Right.
So I think that's exactly state of mind that we all have to put ourselves, is not here nor there, is living in the moment and in this state of constant contemplation. As Ethan says, awareness of awareness, where we are in the zone, we are in connection with a Akashic network, we have access to information, we don't need to ask for the guidance because we are just flowing with it. And as long as we flow and we follow our instincts instead of thinking about them, perhaps that's how we move into a higher form of self. Maybe
there's this great show. It's called Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, and he talks about the whole time is the flow state. He has to get into the flow state so that he can solve these crimes or whatever. And so he's just going wherever his intuition is pulling him, and in doing so, he finds these clues related to the activity. There's also the holistic assassin, which never gets hit, and she can kill anybody she wants to. It's the same idea. Like, there's no, the universe is not playing favorites here. It's like you can do kind of whatever you want to, but these are the basic underlying principles that you must abide by.
Sure, and then you have these ridiculous things that are imposed into us since we are child. That is the relation between good and evil, right? And that perception of good and evil is completely ambiguous. It's completely selfish and driven into the self, instead of being into others, because what is good for us could be evil for others, and vice versa. It's like
self-perpetuating.
Exactly. I see my mother, she has an infestation of ants on the wall that she can't get rid of. And so she now is killing covering every single hole of ants that she, and I'm saying, what are you doing to the poor creatures? Those are not even close to your door. It's ants, it's a pest. So it's good. They are no longer doing evil to those poor creatures that have no notion of what's going on. So I ask, if there is an alien species that are in dire need of a planet, and they reach to planet Earth and it's perfect, the only problem is there is these inconvenient creatures called humans that will stop them from living in peace, because we'll never give them rest. So for the good of their community, they decide to kill us all, right? From our perspective, these aliens are very, very mad, very bad people. From their children, they are heroes because they are doing all they can
doing God's work,
perpetuate their species. Yeah, exactly. So all of this, all our principles are based in something that has no foundations. It just happens to work in a specific society. Until some years ago, if you go to Turkey and you dinner at someone's house and you don't burp loudly at the end of your meal, it was very rude because it seems you didn't like your meal. You didn't burp, so you didn't like your meal, right? But you take the same guy to a fancy restaurant in the States, and that finish of the meal guy at the middle of the restaurant, that guy is completely rude. You see, all of this is very...
That is interesting, yeah.
It's not based on morality. It's not based on equity. It's not based on empathy.
It's on program.
We are not taught to think, do only to others what you'd like done to yourself. We are not taught like this. We are taught to keep yourself safe. There's the enemies. We are the good guys. The whole world is there to hurt you. So we are always creating these fences that doesn't allow to connect one another because we are in fear constant of one another. You see people in the street, and after COVID, people will go to the other sidewalk.
It's linear time versus circular time, right?
Yeah.
So all of these good and evil events is what pushes history forward. And that's what gives people the ability to manipulate others with their own agendas by thinking in terms of these linear events when actually there's a completely different way of seeing things that can get you out of the cycle that you're repeating over and over again that we call linear time. It's not really linear at all.
Yeah, but imagine that your brain is an interface that is a biomachine that has a quantum entanglement to your real self. Let's put it this way, right? And you have a society that is constantly forcing you to live in a state of survival. There's no peace, you're in constant fear, war, famine, terror, whatever. And that brings you out of your brain and into your Broca's brain, or the reptilian brain. And that reptilian brain makes you live almost as a zombie. And that's what we see. You have no access to your knowledge. You have no access to yourself. You're living in those basic 5% degree of consciousness that allowed you to function in the world, but doesn't allow you to understand spirituality, doesn't allow to understand the real power of being human, of absorption of nature, of environment, or whatever. It just keeps you on that 9 to 5 state with the occasional football game or race or whatever you are into. And doesn't allow people to evolve. So if you concentrate all of that, you put these cell phones and all these Wi-Fi and all these frequencies that also help in keeping you in that low level state, there's no chance to evolve. You could try to say the biggest truth to liberate the population, they would not listen to you. In fact, we've seen that to every single one. Usually they used to take them with a nails and stick them to crosses or kill them in a fire or whatever. The process is not so different. So it's very hard to evolve in a world where people are not by their own entire fault, but it's easy to reach because people are just unplugged from reality and are completely drowned in this fake environment that is created by news, by social media, by all of those sources. Music, the frequency of music, all of that.
If I may, that's interesting you say drowned because water sinks to the lowest level, right? And people that are drowning have sunk. As far as like our biological system, we're kind of destined to go through peaks and valleys in an energetic manner, just in the daily, let alone more broadly. But one thing to pursue, I think it's good to look for plateaus. Like as a writer, I never have found a plateau like that. Peaks and valleys. But otherwise, I like to really have my system oriented in a plateau instead of going through these cycles of peaks and valleys. And I don't know if that's helpful for other people. I hope it is, but just understanding that we function in that manner and looking for the plateau, not necessarily ascension and definitely not into the swamp, as Ricardo mentioned, but just a plateau is balanced and is often opportunity.
I think there's something to be said about the ability to control reactivity. Because I think it's within those reactions and the emotional responses that they get so much traction for their agendas, you know, and that's really where that cycle starts to come out and really become obvious.
A mental trick for that is to respond, not react. And that might take a moment or two of thinking. That might take a more refined physical movement, if you will. But thinking of the word reaction, it breaks down to basically being an actor, right? We don't need, and doing it again, repeating it, right? So looking at that word is very, to your point, Headless, that's base, and it's probably going to get us into a pattern that we don't appreciate or isn't useful. So looking for a response is a way to elevate that, and it's just a thought trick. I mean, it's not an active solution.
How many people do you know that are in control that follow that path? That alone is a proof that being good is not a meaning of being successful, because these people are the worst that can have in terms of evil capacity, and they are the ones in control, and they justify their actions by their own means. They believe in what they are doing.
Sure.
And there's no judgment. There is no judgment from above.
If you want to be wealthy, lose your morality. Right? So if you want to be successful, that's different, right? But like a lot of people, as you point out, are extremely wealthy and really have kind of a low morality.
Or not aware of the reality. Go on, Headless.
Well, I was going to say that it builds that cycle of reactivity. Is we're constantly responding to what the people who claim to rule us do in such a way that gives them the ability to manipulate our emotions the next time. So it's like, just by watching these cycles and understanding what's happening inside of us can change the outcomes, because if we're not feeding into these events and these different scandals and everything else that they're sort of perpetrating, because it's always been like this. It's always been one crisis after another. As long as I've been around, that's kind of the way things were. And people keep asking, why can't we go back to the time when there weren't crises every 5 minutes?
Sure.
That's always.
Why aren't there good news on the news?
Right.
Aren't there good news to be told? Sorry?
There's not what sells. We love drama. Human beings are storytellers. We thrive on stories and live vicariously through other people. And so the misery loves company. If we hear bad things, we're, train wreck, you're just watching it. It's not good. It's not, but I think we have bred that into our society. And now we're just jonesing for it. When's the next bad event going to happen? But I think one thing that you said, Ricardo, and then building upon Ethan's plateau and then Headless's reactivity, is from what I've read with fasting, when you suspend yourself from eating, right? You basically are retraining your brain because you're cleansing the gut. You're suspending yourself from earthly things, and you're placing yourself into a state of practice anxiety, practice going without. And you map or you navigate your brain through difficult moments. And so when you speak of not being reactive, I think this is the practice, right? But I think also we forget that the gut biome or the gut microbiome dictates a lot of our brain. And so if we talk about, the foods that are placed on the shelves for us to consume, and then that dictating how we think is essential. And not to push back just a little bit, but I disagree. I think we are part of the planet, and that if we stick our fingers in the dirt, that we can become reconnected, and that we can sense our intuition better, that we can feel the Akashic even more so, because we have brought back some of the natural bacteria back into our gut that works in synchronicity with our, the way it was supposed to be, or the way that before we decided to take the verge over to technology, and then instead back going into intuition and telepathic type moments. So
Lisa,
that's just me though.
I got the perfect example for you. So we used to have gut flora that was capable of processing and storing hydrogen. So all we eat is hydrocarbons, and all we process is the carbons, not the hydrogen. But We used to have the ability to do that. So we're missing a huge chunk of our experience as humans on the planet, which is causing depression and all these other symptoms because we're not able to process hydrogen anymore.
Yeah. I mean, because when we look at the Incas, we look at the Mayans, we look at the Egyptians, we look at, well, I don't know about the Egyptians, but the Aztecs, we look at the Hopis. They were so connected to the planet. And of course they knew. Of course they could sense. Of course they could commune. Of course they could do the things that we don't understand that they could. And we think it's magic. We think it's this. No, they were just very connected because they had that synchronicity going on, I think. And then with the sun itself, because, every single cell in our body has the receptor for vitamin D. And that tells you that looking at the sun is conserved throughout the species of Homo sapien or Homo erectus, whoever you want. And so we're requiring that download of the entire electromagnetic spectrum of the sun to deliver the message to within us. And I don't know, I think that you go long without the sun, you start to see enormous amounts of diseases just manifest based on that. And so to take people out of the sun, to leave them in buildings, to put blue light in front of their face constantly, you have essentially cut them off of any kind of communication, whether it's between each other, whether it's to source, whether it's, what have you. But, that's my take.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to invoke a little bit of duality from my part. And I would answer to you that I agree with everything you said in terms of humans as interaction with the planet. But I would justify that by the fact that whoever made humans used something that was of the earth. And as being,
I agree.
As the ones that created us might have been something closer to what we call a god or an angel or a half divine creature that was imitating that order of creators, of that nucleus of creators, or whatever people want to call it.
The grand order of developers, yes.
So we have half belonging to the planet and half on the spiritual world. So you have this choice, like Elrond, that we can choose to be immortal or to be non-mortal.
Elrond Hubbard?
No, Elrond from Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I thought you meant Elrond Hubbard. That's what I was thinking. I was like, he said that? Okay.
I was going to say, I didn't know we had
Lord of the Rings, yes.
Yeah,
it was probably like one line in a book, and that was it. It was covered with trash.
Yeah, because Elrond was half health. It was not the pure health. It was half health. So he and his brother and his children got the choice to be either mortal or non-mortal. His sons, one decided to be mortal and the other one decided not to be, if I recall correctly. But the point is, we can interact with this planet and its wonders and its emotions and all of it, not only because we have that half animal, we also have that half spiritual that help us transcend from the animal perception, right? I'm sure that if we enter into the world of a panther or even to the world of a mole that enters beneath the ground, it will have some perception of its environment. But humans take it further because they can appreciate it. They can value, as we see some animals do. There are some animals that we look at them and we see that they are really appreciating something. They are being aware of awareness at that moment. They are actually enjoying it, be it the sunset or a program in television or whatever. There are some things in animals sometimes, some animals, not all. My dog is completely insane. But some animals do have that human something into them. That's how I would justify myself by saying that we are not part of the earth. That's I would like to say that. Just thank you.
Well, I think there's a big linkage between what we are and where we're going. So what if we're just, being selectively bred into gray aliens for a AI overlord that doesn't exist yet, but it's building himself backwards in time.
Yeah.
And so
it's like reverse engineering.
That's kind of what we are. We're going to be the servants of the AI that's going to use our bodies as a container.
You have a lot of contactees that now it's not a fashion, but it was a fashion in the 80s, 90s. It was a fashion to have contactees. One of my favorite is a guy that never got a prediction right. Never. He never never managed one. That is Alex Collier. But he's a very humane guy. He's not there to fool you or to trick you. He actually believes in what he's saying. He actually believes that they had all those encounters, that they told all of that story. He actually believes in all of that. So although he might be giving you wrong information, at least he's not trying to fool you. He's transmitting what he actually believes is. And according to him and many others, the Greys are humans in the future. They are coming from the future where our DNA led them to that form because it's all but spent, and led to that anamorphic form with almost asexuated. And they are trying to revitalize their DNA and going back to what it was to being a human by doing experiments with us, trying to impregnate human females or trying to use semen from males on their females. That's what they explain they are trying to do. That this is in regard to what they say. They say that the Greys are us in the future, in the distant future.
I know. Yeah, that's what I was kind of going for, is what if it's not about them trying to rebuild their species as much as it is making more of their kind to be vessels for whatever this thing is that takes over their minds and bodies. Which would make sense if you think about all the psychic experiences people have with UFOs. It seems like they're incredibly much more psychic enabled than humans are. And if that's the case, maybe there's something else acting through them. But
yeah, that's funny because if you remember Stephen Greer with the Disclosure Project, he spent all of those years connecting all those generals, all those military people, convincing them to go testify on Congress of what they've seen, of what they've read. And all of a sudden, he gives all of that and says, now this is all a spiritual connection. Let's go to the top of the mountain with a group of people and let's call these entities, these UFOs. It's a huge jump that I didn't see anyone commenting on, but he transitioned from one day to the other to this. He now only believes that they are completely transcendent connections when he had all these thousands of documents showing him that these are physical events, that they are real, that they saw these beings, that they saw these ships, that these ships interrupted these nuclear facilities and that and so on and blah, blah, blah. And he then transitions completely and says, no, I want it as a group of people in the hive mind state on top of a mountain, and let's call this being and talk to them. So
who's that guy that you don't like, Nick?
Oh, which one? Oh, Louis Alessandro too? Yeah, I think he's another one.
No, not Alessandro. It's the
Greer.
guy who's got the orb alien experiences with Hathor.
He's got the kid.
I just,
I guess.
Yeah. Oh, what the fuck is the name? Yeah, I just think it's a bullshit story. Sorry. yeah, that's all. It's just, I think his father's was a bullshit story too.
Look,
what was his name? I forgot.
Bledsoe.
Bledsoe. There we go.
Sorry, people. You were fans.
You had this South African gentleman that I think was living in the States, but I'm not sure if maybe he was in South Africa. So what he did is he transformed the cameras somehow, a normal camera. He transformed the camera, and he was able to detect different light signatures on the film. And so when he started to point this film cameras, these old recorders that use the cassettes still, and then he moved on. When he changed the cameras, the sensor, and he started pointing them to the sky, he started seeing the rods and the spheres. During day, night, it doesn't matter. They're always there, going back and forwards in the sky. And this guy only has a presentation of 15 minutes in a small documentary. Well, he has lots of information. It was quite active in the 80s and 90s. And now we can't find anything about this guy, how he transformed the cameras, what he used. You can't see any of that. But he was the one that started the rods movement. Because if you see these animals that are seen going into and out of cenotes, which people that talks about cenotes never talked about these creatures, but there are footage of people going down these cenotes, and you see frame by frame, you see these strange rods with things that flap alongside the tube that makes them flow. So what he's trying to prove is that these are not UFOs, but creatures. They're actually creatures that we cannot see for some reason, but in specific forms, the camera can detect them in specific conditions. And I never seen that talked. It just died completely.
Well, what they said was that it was the artifact from the way that a camcorder records on film. So it's got all of these multiple frames happening in the same magnetic strip because a bug or something is moving through it, and it looks like a rod. That's the official explanation. But there are some cases within that that structure where that's not applicable because there's no creature. But it does change the frame of reference to how we view time. And having that ability will change the phenomenology of what you're seeing, because it's not just the amount of light that we let into our eyes; it's the amount of time that we're actually using to process data. It's like the what do they call that on a computer, where the processor
Processing
speed?
time,
Right.
yeah.
Oh,
Right. So the amount of hertz in your processor time changes based off of your frame of reference to what's going on around you.
Yeah,
plus you
so-
only 0.003% of the entire electromagnetic spectrum. You're talking about not even 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum. You don't even see 1%. God only knows. We don't have the capabilities, the machinery in our retina to see it. So there's
Yeah.
also that.
And is it designed or by accident?
Imagine that.
Yeah. Look, if it's the Superman syndrome, if you have all the senses activated, how would you focus? How would you be effective as a worker, as a servant, as a reproductory male or female? You have to focus into something, and so they narrow reality. Our senses narrow reality so that we can absorb it in a way that it can be effective, not spiritual, but effective in this reality. And I think all of that can be manipulated, because you see all through the animal realm, there's animals that not only can communicate by infrasound, like elephants that can communicate 200 kilometers away, because they feel the sound from their paws, not from the ears. It's the paws that capture the infrasound. You have the ultrasound from dolphins, that we also cannot hear. So those guys that are trying to translate the dolphin information by audible sound, they will never get there, because there's a lot more sound in there than what they are using to decode it.
Right.
And so when they send the messages back to the dolphins, what happens is the dolphin is very clever, and it sends this stupid human is only used part of the letters of the phrase. So, but I understand what he's talking about. It's like we reading to those texts that they have the words not complete, but we still can read it. I think that's what happens.
It's like
to
talking with a
dolphins.
broken English.
Yeah. So there is animals that can see in the dark. There's animals that don't need eyes to see. There's animals that have electromagnetic senses. There's animals that can sense the environment by electricity. So
You're just describing a platypus over and over again.
yeah. So the platypus was to see if the mammals could sustain all of that at once. But the problem is they got really ugly and weird.
Yeah.
I thought it was just the leftover parts. I don't know what to do with all
Leftover
this. Just put them on one.
Oh man, once you get into the sensory systems of the platypus, it's so mind-boggling because they can't see unless they're in water, putting out those waves of energy that they pick up all this electromagnetic spectrum stuff. So they're like almost completely blind, but the only way that they see is in water, and they're always rolling around on the land. It's just a crazy animal, and they're poisonous.
Exactly. That I recently found out. I didn't know.
Yeah, they're poisonous. It's funny.
Look,
You know,
this
and I'm sorry.
no, please go.
No, even what you're saying about like all this sensory perception, you hear about also, and you can take it to like a more, ecosystem level, in that you have like these super pod events where you have a congregation of all the different orcas, all the different whales, all the different whatever, to come for the birth of one or the dying of another, or you have elephants that come to mourn the dead. They bury their dead, and the day that they buried, or on the day of that the animal died, they will come back to that location to mourn their dead. I mean, you still have all of this still occurring. It's not just isolated to, oh, they can perceive this, or oh, they can perceive that. It's all encompassing almost across species, across taxa, really.
Right. And have you seen the sharks that have actually approached humans for help with
the
being
needles
stuck stuff?
Yeah, the hooks. Yeah. There was a chick that they remembered her. They'd bring other ones to her.
Right. And
hey, dude, are you a dentist? I have something here.
Yeah, I know. That's what it was. Yo, for real, right? That's what it was like. Yo, take it to the dentist.
I saw one recently. It was like a dolphin that scooted a turtle onto the boat.
Yes. Yeah, it was helping the turtle.
It's like 3 species, and like what? What is going on here?
I think it was saving the turtle from like a sea lion or something that was going after it.
Or something was on it, maybe.
Yeah. It was to save it from something. Yeah, it was like the dolphin knew exactly what it was doing. Brought it to the humans.
And this allows me to correct something that I said before. That is, I said it backwards. What I meant is, there's a lot more people now than the people that died. So there is not enough souls to fill all the bodies that are now alive. That's what I meant to say, and I said it the other way around.
Gotcha.
So some of them might be on those animals that we see operating almost as human.
Yes.
I was going to say, the Buddhists don't limit our reincarnation into human form.
Sure.
But that does raise interesting questions. So with the more people coming on this planet and the more souls coming on this planet, when do you reach this critical density?
Well, if you go to the records, we are reaching a peak and they are starting to decline. So it's cyclical. And it's in conformity with the different types of societies. So if your society is less efficient in terms of maintaining the health or the food of the population, that cycle is much faster. But in our case, our technology has allowed us to grow to an enormous number of people, but it's already started to decline because the natural forces that they can't explain doesn't allow. So this story that we'll get to 20 billion people, it can happen because the biology, we are already having our biology being shut down in terms of reproduction. And they are helping with that, with the eugenics and all of that. They are accelerating it. But we are already decreasing in fertility. It's the same process that led the trees to kill the kudus that were eating the acacias. So when they saw that the kudus were eating too much of the acacia, that acacia would send an electromagnetic signal that is carried by the wind, which I don't know how to explain how that happens, but they send something with the wind.
Wi-Fi.
that is captured by the other trees, and they instantly transform themselves into poisonous. And so when the kudus start eating them, they die.
This is why I hate talk about the bird flu, because the bird flu is a response to overpopulation within these bird populations. So the only time you see the bird flu pop up over and over again is when those birds have outgrown their environment. And by them promoting all of this idea of, well, we're going to put the bird flu on you is just symbolic of what they think of us. Is they're trying to depopulate us with this.
But then also, they've removed all the apex predators. They complain about the outbreaks of wildlife diseases, but yet the apex predators were keeping all of that in check. They were taking out the weak from the population. And now we've rendered all of the populations rendered all the populations to not have an ability to weed out the disease and sick. So
right.
The same with humans. We are now saving children that would have no chance of survival, especially at birth and so on. So that's why we have this high level of people that have deficiencies and all of that, because we cherish them and we allow them to grow. In the past, that wouldn't happen. And if you go to the what's their name? The guys from the 300s, the
Spartans.
The Spartans. If you were born with a defect, you were just abandoned. Literally. I'm not sure that they throw it as in the movie, but you were discarded. So they wouldn't bring you to try and heal you.
But
Either you're
the
born
funny thing about the
perfect.
Spartans, funny things about the Spartans is their eugenics class-based society did not hold up well against the Romans. And they were supposed to be the pinnacle of warrior culture, but they were pretty easily dispatched by this new empire of the Romans, who didn't necessarily have the same kind of focus towards population control.
They were assimilated in hybrid vigor, in fact, right? They're more the opposite. They had everybody.
No, they fought against the Romans for several.
No, I mean the Romans
Yeah,
more.
that's true.
Oh, the Romans worshipped the ground that the Spartans walked on. They thought that was the ultimate society, but they didn't have the same rules and restrictions as the Spartans. One of the things about the Spartans is they would take their children and force them to sacrifice puppies to Ares as a means of toughening them up. But if you think about what school shooters are today, it's that sort of same psychopathy. And so they were trying to train that into their children.
Yeah, that's straight military training.
Yeah.
Ethan, I think
the major.
just
Go on,
real
go
quick,
on.
I think what Ethan was trying to get at is, because I think I was catching what he was trying to say, is that the Romans was kind of like a group of just like anybody, really. You know, a whole bunch of different people put together. The Spartans were basically eugenic, made that way.
That's
You know what I'm saying?
That's
So
what
it is
I'm about to say.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. The Romans survived longer because the Romans didn't close their society to mixed with other societies. And if you go even to societies like Angkor Wat, the decline can be associated by the fact that they didn't mingle with other people. And so they grow, and then their DNA starts to crumble because it's all the same. There's no diversity.
Those
There's
50-minute cities.
Yeah. So, yeah.
No,
yeah.
biodiversity in every species, biodiversity always outcompetes everything else.
Look, I'm very proud that the fact that my two twins were born premature with 7 and a few months. So they fit in my palm. They would placed in incubators. They were burned to a crisp by UV lights for their skin to follow some process. They were completely burned to a crisp, with some goggles on their little heads to protect the eyes, and then they were until the complete skin was a crust, right? That's how they burned them. And after they got out of the hospital, they have now 20 years, and I have never, ever had to go to a medical emergency, ever, by any kind of disease. Why? Because I gave them good food. They had access to natural producing food from the trees, from the ground. I never allowed them to be vaccinated. I never allowed them to take fluor. And I think that shows, because I see my sister, he done completely the opposite with their children, and they are constantly sick. Either allergies, they're completely with the antihistaminics all the time. And I see that my daughters, now that lived home and started to following the ideas of my sister, that you have allergies, you have that, you take this, you take that. And now, from time to time, they get sick. They don't go to bed, but they now get sick, which never happened before. So,
What was the name of anorexia before they recently changed it? They took a word out.
Oh, I don't know.
Do you remember?
Oh.
extremely thinness.
Nervosa. Anorexia nervosa.
Yes, yes.
It has always been associated with this psychological spread of ideas. So when you have the idea of this anorexia outbreak in England, it was all psychological, and they took that to mean that maybe this was a psychologically spread disease, and that's what they've sort of found. But now they're taking out the nervosa part and making it more about, well, what do we do to treat these people for the rest of their lives for anorexia? They're not looking about fixing it psychologically. They're looking about, how do we medicate these people? And so the entire industry is now shifted from, well, these are obviously psychologically related. Maybe we should treat them psychologically and fix the problem. Now it's more, how do we medicate them forever? And that's a scary proposition.
I think that one of the best ways to treat anorexia, how does he say?
Anorexia?
Anorexia, sorry. one of the best ways to treat it. It doesn't work for everybody, but it has a very high rate of success, is by smoking weed. Because you can control your hunger.
Yeah.
And you will eat.
Works for me.
That's not the only version of these illnesses. So, for instance, in Japan, they didn't have the concept of depression. Like, it wasn't part of their vocabulary. They didn't have a word for it. Depression, the idea that we have of depression, was completely, alien to them. And so
that's 20 years or so.
all of these pharmaceutical companies wanted to open up the $5 billion market to antidepressant drugs. So what they decided to do was go on a marketing campaign where they started having these celebrities suffer from depression. And the only way that these celebrities could fix their depression, which they called in Japanese, this was a new word for them, it's the two characters for sad and flu. So it's the sad flu. Depression, and they introduced it into their society, and now they have a $5 billion market for their drugs in Japan because they introduced the concept of depression to them back in about 2007.
Look, you took the priests from the people, right? People used to have the priests to go, and he couldn't refuse that they sit there in the confessionary and they spoke whatever they want to spoke, and that's a therapy. Now people go to the doctor and they are expecting to have a conversation because they don't have anyone to talk to. And they're expecting to sit there and have a conversation. The doctor said, you have 5 minutes.
And an algorithm.
Right? There is no healing because...
No. Algorithm, you're right.
Yeah, it's just
They go by your check marks.
Yeah, take the chemicals and go home. There is no healing whatsoever because the person doesn't even understand what she's taking. So there isn't even the placebo effect because the doctor didn't tell you take this and you get good. Because doctors don't do that anymore. Doctors say, well, this might work for you, but it might also doesn't work for you. But we'll go with this for now, and we'll see how. And 2 days after, the guy had an allergy and died because of the medicine. Or my aunt goes to the hospital because the guy was literally poisoning her by giving this medicament without testing if he had any physiological problems against that same element. So this is not a healing process.
Third leading cause of death.
But if you look back at 20, 30 years ago, that's probably the time when children started to be kept inside. You're no longer seeing children staying out till 10. Your mom yells, come inside, or come to dinner and you're eating with one leg off the chair because you want to hurry up and go back outside and play. You're no longer seeing that. And I think there was a book called The Last Child in the Woods talking about the moment when children started to be kept indoors watching video games or what have you, and then the rise of all of these depressions, anxiety, and even on some cases, the spectrum, children on the spectrum. And so that's also another thing. They're not playing with dirt. They're not eating the microorganisms. And if you read a lot of this, plant soil science data, you'll see that a lot of the serotonin inducing or depression down-regulating is the microbes in the soil. I mean, I don't. Maybe that's just me.
No, it's 100% true. Well, getting that gut flora in shape comes from the fact that you're not eating all these pesticides, because that's what's killing off the gut flora.
That's another thing, that now the soil is full of pesticides. Ethan, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, don't be sorry. That was very wise words. Thank you for sharing that. I just wanted to say in a broad spectrum kind of idea, not that it's related to every disease and disorder, but our immune systems are often either inactive or too active. They can be too active too. Most people it's too inactive. But again, like finding that balance, whether it's through nutrition or herbs or something, or some whatever your specific problem is, a counter to it. But balancing the immune system is really not necessarily simple, but a simple way to really refine our health. And often today, because of not playing and not being active, our immune systems are too inactive, right? So
allergies. Allergies are the perfect example because it puts your entire immune system into a constant state of fight or flight. And then later on you have these immune disorders that result directly from all of these, immune activities that shouldn't be going on. And all that stuff is induced, So we've got, think about the, what are they called? The glyphosate. Glyphosate activates your immune system and creates swelling almost immediately. And everything that you eat that has wheat is covered in glyphosate. That's why people in America bulk up to these huge sizes. It's because their immune systems are overactive, and the way that they're trying to deal with that is by detoxing. The only way you detox is by adding more fat cells. So the fat cells are supposed to soak up the toxins in your body. It's not working out so well.
Well, I think if we use the same mentality that medical practices use, that our body is but a machine, and it's treated as a machine. If we use the same thought, but for holistic terms, with traditional treatments, with herbs, with ancient recipes, that we'll get much better results because it's more in tune with the body than the chemicals that they are producing. But I do have a friend that says, when I say to him, well, you're taking a pill, the pill is not natural. And he answers to me with something that I cannot refute. How can it be here and not being natural? Does it have anything in it that is not natural? Because everything in a pill is natural in the sense that every atom is natural. Every chemical element that is put into the pill is natural.
I would say the distinguishing factor could be, you're right, if it's from nature, but I would say the distinguishing factor could be if it's a petrolithic modification, which most pharmaceuticals are in one way or another. But some, agree. Not all.
I would agree. If it's stereoisomer of the actual molecule, the body is not going to recognize it. The bioavailability of the stereoisomer of the natural thing, the body's like, what do you want me to do with this? Like, it looks like it, but it's not. It's no different than taking vitamin D supplements and thinking that's the end all be all, because it's not. Vitamin D requires for you to consume animal cholesterol, and it has to circulate at the level of the dermis. And when the sunlight, going back to, electromagnetic frequency, when the sun hits your skin and you are carrying the right amount of cholesterol, it will have a quantum change in the cholesterol molecule to convert it to vitamin D, which is the hormone that is required by every cell in your body. That is how you get vitamin D.
You just have to eat oranges.
Well, have you seen the difference?
Dr. Longo says.
Have you seen the difference between the molecules inside of vitamin D vitamin supplements versus the vitamin D produced by the body? The geometry of the vitamin D that you get in supplements is all completely screwed up, and it's not even bioavailable. And the stuff that you get from the body is perfect and crystalline in nature.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, the difference.
That's the difference to me. It's the fact that when it comes from nature, is already in a language that your body will understand. And when it comes from the pharmaceutical industry, it comes from elements that your body will not understand. It will work to mitigate the effects, or you will not feel it. It's like the pills that I take. I have migraines from time to time, and sometimes I'm forced to take an aspirin or something like that. What the aspirin is doing is not curing my headache. It's just closing the sensors of the pain of the headache. So the pain is still there. I just can't work because I don't feel it. That's all most of the medicine that we produce is not to heal, but to mitigate the effects of the illness. So you are not trying to heal people. You're trying to make them functional. That is completely different. And I think that most people that are drawn into a more healthy food and then are drained into this process of going either a vegetarian or vegan or whatever it is, what they're finding is that they're causing serious imbalance to their bodies, because we need all of it. We are omnivores. So we need all of those elements. We don't need just one element. We need all of them. So unless you want to be seriously deficient in this or that element, you should not proceed with a type of food that forces you to eat always the same thing or doesn't have the enough nutrients. And then I see that from my one of my twins' colleague in the university. She's a vegan, and they constantly eat the same thing. It's just the tofu and pasta, and it's always the same thing. You can add some vegetables or this or that, but there is not enough food for keeping the brain working. It just isn't. So, and these people force them to themselves, and then they start to become depressive, and they blame it on the world and all of that, and they don't understand that this philosophy that they decided to follow that doesn't allow them to work properly.
Yeah. Very well said.
Yeah, vitamin D has an ingredient in it that is from rat poison. So that's what you're eating when you're taking the vitamin. So
yeah, but people don't read. I keep saying this. People should, before you buy a product, read what's in the product. Because every time it says sugar-free, you'll find aspartame, you'll find aspartame K, you'll find those that end up in eosine or something like that I can't remember right now. But there are 3 of them that cause bladder cancer, failure of the kidneys, and this is not hidden information, but people still go and drink Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi or Diet 7-Up or free of sugar this, free of sugar that. They are eating shit. That's what they are eating. Because the sugar, if it's not there, their substitute is much worse than the sugar itself.
Yo, that happened to me. I literally had to come off of stuff that was sugar-free and I had to stop using aspartame. It was fucking me up. I literally stopped buying sugar-free coffee sweetener and stopped using aspartame in my coffee and went to whatever, that brown sugar. Totally fine. But I was fucked up for weeks and I was like, yo, what is wrong with my stomach? And I got people were like, yo, you do use a lot of aspartame. I cut it out. Totally fine. Like within the next day or 2.
Oh, that's the mouse in you, because aspartame is the key ingredient in the poison for mouse, for killing mice.
Yo, it like literally just felt like I had a knife in my stomach. It wasn't like...
Yeah.
You know,
it's terrible. It's terrible.
I wonder what happens if you mix vitamin D3 with aspartame. I wonder what happens to you. Probably explode.
You look like a corrosive battery or something.
Look, I use in all my food, after it's cooked on a plate, I use in all of my food a little bit of curcuma. That is the most powerful, how do you call it? I don't know how to say it in English.
Antioxidant?
No, it's not.
Anti-inflammatory.
Thank you. So it's the most powerful that we have. And when I feel that I'm getting too much metal poisoning or whatever you want to call it, parsley is still used in Russian hospitals for radiation sickness. It's So it's the best thing you have to release your body from heavy metals, is the use of parsley. And I think it's fundamental that people stop using mineral salt, be it from Himalayas, whatever bullshit they're sending to you. Use only marine salt caught by purely mechanical systems, like a shovel into the bag. Because if your salt is dry, it's not good. You have to have some humidity on your sea salt, because there's a lot of lies in packaging of sea salt. They are not sea salt. They are mineral salt with a little bit of seawater in them. You have to check it. Real pure sea salt is vital for any kind of healthy working of the system, because it has the same 88 illegal elements that we have on our blood. So that's why you can save someone by doing a saline solution of sea salt, but if you do it with mineral salt, you'll kill the person. That's the difference. Either you save his life or you kill it. And all this cholesterol, all this idea of cholesterol coming from butter and from eating fat, it's completely wrong. Because what cholesterol is when people eating this mineral salt, there is 3 elements: silica, glass, and sodium chloride, that is the salt itself. So what happens is the sodium chloride will dissolve in your stomach, but the silica and the glass won't. and they'll go into your bloodstream, and they will scar your blood vessels from the inside. So when the blood vessels get scarred, the defenses of the mechanism that we have to heal the veins is called cholesterol. So it creates this fat structure on that fissure that has in the vein to cover that scar, that wound on the vein. So what happens is people keep doing that to the veins, and the cholesterol keeps increasing, and then people eat fat, and the fat gets stuck because it can't pass through the veins and cause these coagulants and this cholesterol serious problems. And it all comes from the salt, not from the fat, because it's the salt that is causing these problems inside the veins of people.
Scarring, kind of.
This, and it, all because of the salt. It's such a simple thing. Just go shopping and see sea salt. Okay, it's 50 cents more expensive. It's $1 more expensive, but your life worth more than that. So take the sea salt and use the sea salt. You have to learn to cook again because it's different, the amount that you have to put in and so on. So sometimes you'll not enough and sometimes it will be too much. But it's something that I seriously recommend people to do.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. If you don't mind, I think I'll wrap it up here. We're already almost at 2.5 hours already. Time flew by. Awesome discussion. Thank you very much. Before we wrap it up, we'll just I guess let everybody plug themselves again. Lisa, what is going on? Let everybody know.
I only got occultresearchinstitute.org. Ethan posted something great. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you. Headless Nick. And a great discussion. Thank you for inviting me on.
Hell yeah. I definitely wanted to get you both on at the same time. Thank you. Headless, my man, please.
Thank you. So this was a great discussion.
Always.
Thanks for having me again. And you can find me at YouTube, X, Headless Giant. And also, if you send me your occult/mystical experiences, the Headless Giant podcast at gmail.com. Thank you.
Hell yeah. Don't forget. And Ethan Indigo, sir.
Peace. That was awesome, Ricardo. Thank you. Earth energy ideas, very interesting. I got to learn more. And yeah, I'm on all the social media. Enjoy communication, and we'll be sharing more articles as time goes on. And appreciate this, Nick, everyone.
Of course. No,
Thank you.
This is awesome. And Ricardo, please let everybody know again the book and where they can find your stuff.
Sure. So you can find my books at Amazon. You just write the Resonant Earth at Ricardo Calvário or the Stardust and Ricardo Calvário. You'll find most books there. You can find me on X at Ricardo Calvário 1. And my YouTube channel is, forgive me, either Institute for Natural Philosophy or History, Myths, and Legends. That is my personal one. I'm now posting most of the things on X. So that's where you'll find most of my content. It's there. So thank you very much for having me once more.
Of course. No, of course.
It was wonderful people here, so thank you very much.
No, definitely. I thought it was a great chat. We definitely have to do more of them. It was really awesome. I'll have to get you on for Stardust as well. So,
sure.
Yeah. But thank you all again, all of you, for making the time, especially Headless and Lisa. You came from doing a show a few hours ago. That's what's up. That is the end of another Occult Rejects. Until the next one, everybody be well. Later.